Welcome back to the Snod Pod with Jon Snodgrass, your mortgage resource, where we're talking mortgages, real estate, and beyond. I've got Graham Wiemer here, attorney at McGillis Wiemer, family attorney, divorce attorney. I thought it'd be a great topic to get into divorce and mortgages. But Graham, thanks for coming on.
Oh gosh, I'm just so happy to be here. Longtime fan, first time guest. It's exciting for me. I'm a big fan of podcasts, but especially the Snod Pod, man. It's very interesting. It's been fun to watch the different guests that you had. So I'm just so happy to be in this seat.
Hey, I appreciate it. Well, hey, let's just start, I guess, kind of like, so you go to law school. First, where'd you go to law school? And then what'd you do right out of law school? And then when did McGillis Wiemer start?
So I'm originally from Ohio, actually. Went to law school at Notre Dame. Met my now wife there. She's a lawyer too. She got the first job in Milwaukee, so we moved from law school to here. Was working at a smaller firm in Germantown, doing a lot of different areas of law, but including like divorce and family law. A year later or so, Chris McGillis started at the same firm. Very quickly, we became friends, good collaborators, good coworkers. If he had a question, I think it was probably me that he came to first. And if I had a question, sort of relying on him in that way. We decided we worked well together and wanted to sort of go out on our own path, and so started the firm together in 2010. 2010,
okay. So you're going on 15 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were you doing? So you said you were doing like a little bit of everything at this firm, or was it mainly the family law?
Yeah, so Chris and I shared a lot of overlap in what we call first responder law.
Okay, sure.
So working with cops and firefighters, their public employee unions.
Yeah.
He also does personal injury work.
Yeah.
And I do divorce work, or what we call family law. Family law is a little bit of a, needs more explanation because it is divorce work, but it is working with, it's still a family if they're divorced. And so it's mom and dad and kids. So that's what we call sometimes post-judgment of divorce. But it can be people that were never married too, that have kids or whatever. And so the overlap for a while was Chris doing personal injury, first responder stuff, me doing divorce and first responder stuff. And then through the years, what's happened is my sort of divorce and family law practice has gotten so big that that's what I do exclusively and have been for the last several years.
Okay. Was there a reason you gravitated towards the family law, or is it just something you were early on trying a couple of different things and that's just what you liked, or how did you get to it?
Yeah. So when you have a smaller firm that has a more general practice, my experience at least, but I think this is pretty universal, is that the divorce work, the family work ends up getting handed down to the youngest lawyer because they can be told what to do.
Okay.
And so the joke is sort of that the lawyer doesn't find family law finds the lawyer. And so at first it started as like, nobody else wants to do this, you got to do it, you're a low man on the totem pole. But then I sort of felt like I was pretty good at it and started to feel what sort of even inspires me now, which is helping families, helping kids.
Yeah.
Not every time, certainly. Some cases are just hard and stressful, but those ones that you remember, the ones where you feel like you're making a difference. So then I started getting in, it's a technical term, but if there is, say, a divorce and there's minor children and the husband and the wife don't agree on what to do with those minor children, ultimately, a judge will add another attorney to the case. They'll appoint what's called a guardian ad litem. So people say GAL. And so that third attorney, that attorney for the kids, is appointed by the court to represent the kids' best interests.
Okay.
And so
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And so my sort of philosophy is I would hope that people could avoid a guardian ad litem.
Sure.
Because that's a step towards like, we're not going to be able to agree. We're not aligned in the best interest.
This is going to get messy.
Yeah. Not guaranteed, right?
Sure,
But also early in my career was doing a lot of guardian ad litem work. And so that is being a lawyer for the kids. That is still being a lawyer and being an advocate for their best interest. But that's doing, I don't know, like an element of social work or something. It's doing a different type of investigation, a different type of advocacy.
And the judge is assigning you to be?
In every situation, the judge picks the attorney to be the guardian ad litem.
Got it.
hopefully, but I think this happened, most judges will defer to the lawyers. If the lawyers are saying, hey, we talked, and for these particular issues, for this particular case, this person might be the best attorney to appoint.
Yeah.
More often than not, the judge will, if there's an agreement on that,
Okay.
the judge will, go with that person. But
Got it.
sometimes I wondered if I got appointed because I was doing a good job, or on some of the harder cases, if I got appointed like almost as a punishment because the judge didn't like me. But yeah.
Well, you've got a very like calming demeanor. When we
thank
first met through our mutual friend Derek Collins,
Yeah.
and reached out, we got coffee, and my blood pressure went down when I met
thank
you.
you.
So
Yeah. So anyway, the idea of family law, divorce work, it's hard.
yeah,
It's hard to
Sure.
get divorced. It's hard. The issues, even when people are aligned in wanting the best for their children, aligned in trying to find, some sort of mutual agreement that benefits them both, even though they're separating. It's even in the best case scenario, it's still hard.
yeah,
I end up saying to clients a lot, your family's not ending; it's just changing. You always be mom and dad, and that could be. It takes on a different sort of experience for different people. Because certainly it's sad,
Yeah.
right? Nobody wants to get divorced,
right,
but it could be okay. And actually, in the long run, you could be sort of better co-parents. It feels a little blasphemous to say, but
Right.
it's true. You could be better raising kids not married.
Sure.
Sometimes,
yeah.
right?
So, what is, and this is probably like a typical. Is there a typical divorce, or I guess how does it start? Is a lot of time where both are the couples coming to you together, or is it usually one? Or I guess give me a couple different scenarios how it begins.
Yeah, so there's probably limitless ways for a divorce to begin. Sometimes one person has really thought about it for a long time, and the other person's completely blindsided. Sometimes it's a mutual decision. Sometimes it's a very, contemplative thing where can we make this work? How are we going to try? It's just not working.
Let's go to counseling
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that discernment process is really different for everybody. I don't know that there's any consistency. I don't know that there's any most likely way to go about that. I also, as a divorce lawyer, at least one of the people, if not both, has decided that it's time to get divorced.
Okay.
And so I'm not the one that would help in the discernment process, right? Yeah. And so people, when they come to my office, it's time.
If you're coming to talk about it,
yeah, but,
it's time.
I guess I should add that there's also just an education process. If you're in the middle of a tumultuous time and you're wondering whether divorce is going to happen, it's also a good idea to just get educated about what a divorce is, what
Sure.
it isn't. And so I do talk to people that are going, hey, I hope I don't need to talk to you ever again.
Yeah.
But I have some questions.
Right.
It's happy to help in that way too. Sometimes that it lightens people, and then they figure out a way to make it work because some of their misconceptions about a divorce are cleared up. Sometimes it does the opposite, right? Where I'm trying to hold this thing together. I'm trying to, and I'm sort of going it might be in your best legal interests to get divorced. I'm not a champion for divorce or anything, but when you're talking solely about that legal advice piece of it, right?
Yeah.
Not the rest of it, but it can be where the legal advice is, hey, you're going to be better off after this legal process is over, divorced, not married. So
Yeah.
it can take on different situations will result in different advice, right? And so the laws that we work with, the statutes, those don't change, or at least don't change often.
Yeah.
But the facts of the case end up being very important.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the timing of the divorce? So they come to you, or somebody comes to you, maybe they both come to you, they file for divorce.
Yep.
From that point till the end, how long does that usually take? And it's probably a loaded question, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because I got a friend who's going on 2 years. But
Well, so different cases take different lengths of time, obviously. different families, different situations, different issues, but even different counties and different judges.
Oh, really?
So, for example, Waukesha County likes it to be known that they want their cases to finish up in a year or less.
Okay.
If they count the day, hey, you've been longer than a year. What's up?
Yeah.
But different judges, different fact scenarios, different issues will, it can take longer than a year, but they're going to start asking questions. It's also sometimes about how busy the particular court is, that judge's calendar. For example, Milwaukee County is known to be pretty busy. It's a pretty high volume amount of cases.
Okay.
So that might be different than some of the more suburban counties where they have more judges, less cases, less volume.
Okay.
But all of this is a long way of saying there's no one answer to that question.
Yeah.
The minimum amount of time it can take is 120 days.
Okay.
So 4 months. That's built into the statute. They call it, we call it a cooling off period.
Cool. Yeah.
You don't want to get mad, file for divorce, get divorced, realize you made a mistake.
Yeah.
And so in that period of time, that 120 days, we do try to gather information, try to exchange it, talk about it, so that if it's possible to get it done efficiently, does it happen on day 120? No, rarely, but
sure.
In that ballpark.
In the ballpark.
Yeah. And so minimum time, 4 months, maximum time, 2 years, a little bit out of the ordinary.
It wasn't quite 2, but it's
but year and a half,
something like that.
Yeah. So when you file for divorce,
different state too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Different state to state is very different.
That's what. Yeah.
So we file for divorce in Wisconsin, or really any case, a criminal case, a eviction, a small claims, it's going to get a case number assigned to it.
Okay.
And almost always the case number starts with a year. And so if you were to file for divorce today, your case would be 25 FA for family, and then whatever number it has been in the filing system, right? Okay. And so I don't know that I have many open pending cases that are 22 FA something, but I definitely have 23 FA, right? So we have stuff that's been pending, not yet 2 years, but a year and a half, definitely. There's certainly a lot of 24 FAs, and then the newer ones obviously are 25.
Okay. And I might be jumping around here a little bit, but this is another friend where it's somewhat of an amicable, if you can say amicable,
right,
divorce, but where they've got kids like 8th grade freshman or freshman sophomore, and they've just decided it's time. However, they're going to do what they've called nesting.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? And I got a follow up.
Yeah. So some of these words, some of these phrases that we in the practice use all the time, when you're not immersed in it, sound weird, right? But so nesting is absolutely a thing.
I'd never heard of it.
Yeah. That the family law courts, that the attorneys.
So everybody knows.
It's
not
thrown
new.
around.
It's not new. Okay.
Yeah. The idea, as I understand it, comes from you keep the kids in the nest, right? You keep them in home, and then each parent sort of leaves the nest one at a time.
Okay.
And so that can be a situation where the couple gets one apartment.
That's what this particular friend is doing, that where they share it.
So then there's a schedule.
Yep.
Kids never leave, but what parent is going to be where, and they each also share that apartment. Mm-hmm. I'm in the middle of a case now where my guy goes to his brother's house when he's leaving the nest, and I actually don't know where the wife goes, but somewhere else.
Okay.
In my experience, it's a good or can be a good short-term solution.
Yeah.
I don't know how good of a long-term solution it is.
Yeah.
In part, like, just off the top of my head, the amount of things that could go wrong if you're getting divorced or you are divorced, but you're still sharing communal living space.
Right.
Even my own wife, who I hope never files for divorce, like, doesn't really like how slow I am to put away clean clothes.
I was going to reiterate that.
Yeah. And so, I try to be good about it to not make her that upset while we're married.
Right.
Guess what I'm not going to do if I'm not cleaning up those clothes.
Yeah.
Right. So nesting as an idea, it's actually very child focused, which I like.
Yeah.
It is trying to disrupt the kids' day-to-day as little as possible. Mm-hmm. That takes some really good cooperation between parents. Mm-hmm. I just said that sometimes parents can be better co-parents divorced than married, so it can work. I'm definitely not saying it works in every situation.
Yeah.
And if I had to go off the top of my head without really looking, like maybe 50-50, it works. It's not gosh, nesting is the solution.
Right. Yeah, I wonder, like you try out living in the same apartment at different times, like how long that actually works. You know, I get to start because you're trying to save money. You don't want to each get an apartment. Right. You know,
that to me sounds like just a Band-Aid.
It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah. It makes sense to get some separation, to get used to sort of co-parenting, where one person is there with the kids and has all the responsibility and the other person's sort of gone. Mm-hmm. But I think it makes sense to not commit to that other apartment, at least in my belief, for a very long period of time.
Well, especially if like a girlfriend or a boyfriend's in the mix and like, hey, you know, maybe they're using my brush or something.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
I could imagine that maybe lasting a week or something.
Yeah, right. So tell me a little bit about, so you've got the McGillis Wiemer, but then you've also got this supplemental company, or it's part of it, where it's Wisconsin Family Law, where you kind of take, like, I don't know if holistic is the right word, but
sure. So for better or for worse, there's no short way to sort of describe this. But as I've worked through cases, as I worked through families, as I've done this guardian litem work, as I've gotten more training on the best predictors for kids' sort of success in adulthood, and how to deal with the separation, physical, emotional, those sorts of things, as either parents, they were never married and were never living together, or they're getting divorced, or they were living together but now they're getting separate. And the more training, the more experience, the more I learned about it, the more I believe in what I refer to, but I think a lot of people do, as an interdisciplinary approach. So bringing in experts that can help the family in whatever way they need to. Often that's working with counselors and therapists, mental health professionals. And so sometimes what we say is, instead of a guardian ad litem, go work with, the term is child specialist, right?
Okay.
And we use that term very intentionally, not because it's therapy or counseling or you need a diagnosis or a treatment plan. And oftentimes a child specialist is not even covered on insurance, because what it is another tool separate from sort of the court process to help people refocus on sort of best interests of kids. How are we going to make this work? What is the parenting plan now that we're going to be divorced or physically separate? Yeah. And so Wisconsin Family Law Resources is an idea of promoting the interdisciplinary approach. And so that can be from a mediation standpoint, where the parties are not trying to fight, but they need some help. Okay. So they hire sort of a neutral. They hire a lawyer to help and to work with them, not a lawyer for either party, not an advocate for either party, but a neutral lawyer mediator who's meeting, talking, suggesting, maybe even drafting, right? Not providing legal advice, but working the system, helping this family get through it. Okay. So that can be an interdisciplinary intervention as well.
So this is like an amicable.
Yeah. This is, like, we know we're getting divorced. What do we do now? But we don't want it to be World War III, but we
don't want to pay through the roof. Exactly. We each get an attorney, and then our attorneys are talking. I mean, I think it's expensive. Yeah,
it can be very expensive to get divorced. But so it is the idea of an interdisciplinary divorce. I should add a collaborative divorce, but explain that in a second.
Sure.
But so it's certainly working with mental health professionals that have experience with it. But it is, and I think this is what brings even us together, it's realtors, it's accountants, it's mortgage brokers, it's people like
financial advisor.
Absolutely. We're working with the same people, right? And let's just be more intentional about it. Yeah. Right? So if I know that I'm working with a family that is trying to figure out how one of the parties can keep the house, I want to know that somebody like you, who's got experience in the mortgage industry, who can help, who can answer questions, who it's not going to take a bunch of phone calls to get right to the answer, right? That if we are intentional about working, that is the type of interdisciplinary sort of relationship, interdisciplinary help that we're trying to provide.
Right.
And you know, there's a lot of good people out there. Let's just be sort of intentional about working together better.
Right. Yeah, and that's the approach that, I mean, I love doing where, it's like I get a call from you or a divorce attorney early on, or I get a fair amount of business from financial planners.
Yep.
That's another way I kind of get involved. And they're like, hey, this is what's going on. They haven't filed yet, but hey, we'd love to have a 3-way call or a 4-way call.
Absolutely.
And let's collaborate and try to figure things out best we can.
Yeah. I am saying to clients often, give John a call.
Yeah.
I think, what? I say, listen, he can handle the other end of the phone call. If you go, Graham made me call you.
Yeah.
Right?
I know where you're going. And then it's like, well, because a lot of times it's like one person wants to stay in it, and we're going to do another episode where we'll go into kind of like the actual what's going on in the mortgage process and stuff and divorce. But where one spouse may need some money from the equity of the house and the other one wants to stay in, and hey, we got to figure out, how this all works. Oh, does somebody's credit not that great?
Yep.
Oh, well, you know what? Let's just get the credit right now, because this process can go a minimum of 4 months, right?
Yep.
Sometimes longer.
Yep.
Hey, let's see if we can figure out your credit situation, or if you're gonna get a payout. Hey, maybe we should use some of that money to pay off some of that credit card debt. And that's where like I come in, and then the financial advisor, like, hey, how are we gonna set up? So like the collaborative approach makes things a whole lot easier compared to where I just get a call like a month before divorce. Hey, I need a mortgage.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, what's going on here?
Yeah, and if we can sort of be more intentional, be more collaborative, interdisciplinary, I think it's so much more efficient. I think it's so much more helpful.
Yeah.
The idea of knowing, for example, what the mortgage broker, what the companies might want to see in terms of paid off debt, or even getting the language right. Let's say my spouse is keeping the house, but I know I want to go buy one.
Yep.
What do you need to see to make sure that I'm clear of that of that debt?
Right. What needs to be
in writing?
In writing in the marital settlement agreement.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's maybe wrap this one up, because we're like about there to start talking about it. But I guess one question I had before we go to that is, I just read Matthew McConaughey's book, Greenlight's great book, by the way. I actually listened to it too. I listened to it as well. Anyways, his parents divorced like 2 or 3 times, so then they get back to get married. Just curious, does that ever happen? Or have you ever seen it?
Yeah.
And like, what can you untangle? I guess maybe 2 questions. Does it happen sometimes shortly after the divorce, or maybe it happens a couple of years? I guess what happens there? How do you unwind the divorce?
Well, so
or maybe you don't unwind it, but what happens?
I think the most important thing is it doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And we're somebody to a former client to come to me and say, hey, this is going pretty well. I'm thinking about marrying my ex-wife again, right? I go, don't.
Okay.
You can live together, you can act married, you can do it, but you went through this whole process of untangling all the finances of everything related. Like, you sure? And so then I'd probably say prenup.
Prenup. Okay, that's okay.
And so that you just fix you keep in place, I guess, what's already been done through the first divorce when you go into the second marriage.
Okay.
Generally, I would probably also say, I'm not up to the statistics exactly, but it's something like 49% of first marriages end in divorce, and some higher number, some 70% or something of second marriages.
Oh, really?
So there's a number of reasons to not get remarried to the same person again.
Got it.
But how a court would treat that second marriage, just because you were married and then divorced and then remarried, it doesn't change. It would just look at it the same way it would for my marriage or anybody's sort of second marriage ending in divorce. And so you divide property again. You'd get the debts assigned, and maybe who's going to keep the house, all that same stuff, retirement accounts, cars, personal property. You're doing it all over again. Yeah. Which is just another reason I would just say, don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah. It was just an interesting story in the book, and
he's an interesting guy.
Yeah. I've listened to him on many podcasts, and then I ended up reading the book and I listened to it. he's got a great voice to tell the stories. But okay, before we get to the next one too, what about two questions, I guess. Prenup. I feel like we don't have much prenups in Wisconsin. I lived in California, I lived in LA for a while, and it just seemed like that's a big thing out there because I don't know, there's just bigger money out there. People have trusts. Does that happen much here? And do you recommend it ever? Or
so a couple questions there. So I guess I'll start with we say prenuptial agreement, but I think the formal term is marital property agreement.
Marital property agreement.
And oftentimes marital property agreements are written by lawyers who have an estate planning background. And so they can be in contemplation of getting married, we're thinking about a prenup, but it could be for any number of reasons too. Tax planning, financial. Let's say it's a second marriage and you have adult children, just to sort of clarify as part of your estate plan.
Yeah.
What is being left to the adult children? What's being left to the new spouse? Those sorts of things.
Okay.
And so I would guess if you had an estate planning attorney here, they'd say, "Oh yeah, we do them all the time. We're doing marital property agreements all the time."
Yeah.
So sometimes, often, there's provisions of those marital property agreements applicable to what happens in a divorce.
Okay.
The good legal advice to anybody getting married, or almost anybody, is think about this.
Think about it.
Probably get one.
Okay.
People have asked me, well, you're married. Do you have a prenup?
Yeah.
And I was all student loan debt when we got married. So that wouldn't, I suppose my wife should have got one.
Yeah.
But no, I don't.
Okay.
But let's say something tragic happens. My wife passes away.
Yep.
And then in a couple of years, I'm going to get remarried. I got minor children. I got a house. I got a mortgage. I still have student loans. I got retirement accounts, whatever. It just makes sense to sort of talk about that.
Sure.
What's going to happen if this second marriage ends in divorce? What's going to happen if I pass away before my new spouse, who's not the mother of my children?
Sure.
What's going to happen if we have more children?
Yeah.
Right. And so those aren't necessarily fun things to think about when you're also planning a wedding but it's worth doing.
I feel it's when I've heard it, it's more common in the second marriage.
Yeah.
It seems definitely more common.
Yeah. But so anyway, to answer your other question, do we see them a lot? Yeah.
Okay.
I think people that are seeking out legal advice are getting the recommendation to do it. There's benefits to it.
Yeah.
There are certain questions that couples have to talk through that maybe they didn't.
Yeah.
I think actually getting divorced isn't easy. It isn't fun. Mm-hmm. Maybe it should be harder to get married. Right?
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
I'm not saying required it should be a marital property agreement or prenup, but we lawyers that are working with people, fiancés at that point in time are asking questions that are important.
Yeah.
Sometimes they thought about them. They already have the answers. They know exactly what they want, and the drafting could be easy. Yeah. But sometimes they're going, "Oh, good question. I don't know. We got to talk about that."
I would just say that in that, having more education before you get married.
Absolutely.
Is your spouse, mainly the guys, a good listener?
Yeah, right.
As I've learned.
Right. I try to be.
All right, one more kind of curveball. Since I had this scenario, and I'm assuming maybe it's a simple answer, but so these two people were not married, in their 60s, owned a home together, and Wisconsin's marital property state. She was not on the mortgage because her credit wasn't as good. And so he's on the mortgage, but she's on the title and the deed and stuff. So she owns half of it, and he has a heart attack and dies.
Okay.
So, yeah. And so then he had kids.
Okay.
So now she's thinking, I had a good relationship with them. I'll go to them and let's just do a refinance and I'll pay them out. And it just didn't work great.
It doesn't sound like a setup for something.
No, it was a mess, and it ended up taking maybe a year and a half. We thought that they were going to be amicable, and then they were like, "Oh, we don't like the appraised value that you got from your mortgage guy. Right. We think it's worth more." Any advice in a situation where you're living together and not married? If
you're going to buy a house together, you got to have some sort of written understanding of what's going on. right? It doesn't make sense to me to be on a deed but not on a mortgage, or vice versa. In a way, in that situation, you're like business partners. And so it makes sense to have those sorts of things in writing and understanding in case somebody has a heart attack. But also what I was reflecting on is you're talking about probate court when somebody passes away.
Yeah, it was a mess. Yeah.
Right. And so probate litigation, if you look at some of the more high conflict World War III style divorces, it's really sad, right?
Yeah.
There's kids involved often, and there's certainly a lot of money going out the door, a lot of time, a lot of stress, whatever. But at some point, it ends. And hopefully there's an opportunity to sort of refocus on where we are now, especially if there's minor children. But in probate litigation, you've often got somebody who passed away.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And it's almost always, right, by nature of probate court.
Right.
And so the adult children and either the long-term girlfriend or whatever, maybe they didn't have as great a relationship as they thought they had.
Right.
But now they're fighting over stuff, and their common sort of relative, their common loved one passed away.
Yes.
It's easier to fight in that situation. It's easier to have litigation. It's easier to make it take way longer. It's easier to hold out for your best case scenario rather than find mutual ground.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just a sort of one of those tales you tell where you say like, hey, if you two adults, you're older, you're not married, but you're acting, you're long-term loved one.
Yeah.
Don't set yourself up for this type of battle.
Yeah.
If one of both of you, if one of you passes away.
Yeah.
So that could be a type of agreement in writing, like we're talking about with the marital property agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
It obviously would be something different because you'd be contemplating being almost like co-owners, business partners, because you're not getting married.
Yeah.
But that can control, those estate planning documents can make that probate court real easy, real smooth, no probate litigation,
Right.
which is to say for you, the situation that you're talking about avoided entirely. Yeah. Because it's very clear what's going to happen.
Yeah. All right, last question before we get to the mortgage side of things in the next episode. I get a lot of first-time home buyers that come to me and, hey, we're engaged, and, hey, we're getting married in September. We just want to get the house for the summer. I always suggest, usually I'm talking to one earlier on, and I typically will suggest, hey, it might be worth you just buying it yourself if you can qualify, because you're not married yet. Hey, not saying anything.
That's good advice.
Stranger things have happened. I have had one in my 20 years of doing this where they bought the house and then they didn't get married, and it wasn't too messy. They ended up just selling it and moving on. But what do you think of my advice? Is it
good advice?
Okay.
Yeah. It's worth pointing out, though, that Wisconsin is, as I think you mentioned, a marital property state. And so the starting point for really anything, almost anything, asset, debt, whatever it is that it's marital, that it's sort of equally owned between the two. So even if it is a home purchased by just one party, debt in just one party's name, they get married, now we're switching into a conversation of another fancy legal term, but a presumption, right, that it's marital property.
Okay.
That those presumptions can be overcome in certain specific circumstances, but it is not the case that if you buy a home just in your name with a debt mortgage just in your name in the summer, and let's say you get married in the fall, that somehow that house is excluded from marital property, or that it's only your house or anything like that. To do that, you need the prenup or some sort of specific intention about that, because there's sort of legal magic to that idea of getting married. That's when your stuff converts to marital property.
Okay.
And so, again, the presumption with anything owned by either or both of the parties, with some exceptions, but it's marital property, and then it's subject to division by the court. Okay. And the presumption is that those things are going to be divided equally.
Got it.
So anyway, I do think in your situation that if one person can qualify, and it's not going to be any dip, like you bring in the other person is not going to help the rate, and that's not going to lower the that just makes sense. Yeah,
I've got one going right now. They've written a couple offers, and she's qualifies on her own, and she asked, and I said, look, this is what I've always recommend. Most of the time when people that are engaged, everything's fine. But I always just say I had one case where things didn't work out, and
it'd be a little different to me if the situation was regarding the down payment. And let's say only one person's qualifying, but the other person's bringing sort of cash to the table for the part of the down payment. Well, I don't know that I would say to that person, just put money into this house because you think you're going to get married at some point. It's going to be marital property at some point.
Yeah.
But I don't have any problem with the idea of making it. You're sort of just saying, like, don't overcomplicate this. Let's just make it simple.
Let's make it simple. If you qualify, hey,
right.
Here's something to think about if you need the other person.
Likewise, as you're doing your numbers and your estimates, whatever, you're going, hey, if you had this person also on the loan, you'd actually qualify for this better thing, right? Maybe the advice then is, like, I know you're not married yet, whatever, but maybe you consider adding you both to the mortgage because I can get you this better thing, So.
Typically, it's all credit score driven. So if you've got a good credit score and you qualify on your own, there's no need to bring the other one on, unless for some reason you want a bigger house. You need, so. Right. All right, last one, this has been super serious.
Yeah.
I had to pull up the Wedding Crashers scene at the beginning. Does it ever just go as easy as that, where you're dealing with Dwight Yoakam and you just split the miles? And...
Yeah. So Wedding Crashers, long time ago movie, very funny. I had seen the movie, laughed. Then, I don't know the timing, but gone to law school or finished law school or whatever. Started to do divorce work and then really get into mediation, interdisciplinary, whatever. And sort of forgot that the premise of the movie Wedding Crashers, it starts with they're divorce lawyers, right? They're mediators, right?
Yeah.
And so then coming back around, I forget when that sort of popped in my head, but more recently. So I do really like that part of the movie that is how good it could be, right? Yeah. Forget all the wedding crashing, but the mediator part, the working together, refocus, I know you're upset now, but what about absolutely.
And I would imagine it's cheaper.
I can't say 100% of the time, but more often, yes.
Okay.
A lot of it depends on the specific issues, how long it's going to take to sort of work through them, how much education one or both parties needs about what the options are.
Sure. Okay.
And somebody said to me once, I need to know exactly how much it's going to cost me.
Yeah. The
potential client. And I said, well, tell me exactly how many times you're going to call me on the phone. And he said, how can I do that? And I said, well, and so it's just so case specific or fact specific.
Yeah.
But yes, I think the huge benefit to mediation is that it is regularly cheaper. There are cases that are just not appropriate for mediation, though.
Okay.
I can think of a number of different reasons, but one go-to, so if there's domestic violence, that can be really hard to mediate.
Yeah.
If there's two people that, for whatever reason, whether it's domestic violence or something else, they can't be in the same room together.
Yeah.
We could do Zoom or they call it sometimes shuttle mediation, where the mediator goes back and forth.
Okay.
But that just makes it harder.
Got it. Okay. I thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, we tried to end with something funny on Wedding Crashers.
Yeah, then we went back serious.
I brought it back out again. So I guess let me try. This podcast is great. It's educational. I had a great time. I just love everything about the Snod Pod.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's wrap this one up. Graham Wiemer here from McGillis Wiemer and Wisconsin Family Law.
Wisconsin Family Law Resources.
Thank you. Wisconsin Family Resources. Thanks for coming on. We'll do one more where we talk mainly mortgages and finances.
Great.
This has been the Snod Pod with Jon Snodgrass, your mortgage resource. We're talking mortgages, real estate, divorce and finances and mortgages. Thanks for watching. We'll be right back.